We demand the immediate removal of GNPC CEO Opoku Ahwene Dankwa and the board chairman Freddie W. Blay from their respective positions, as they have become a threat to Ghana's interest in the petroleum sector. 6, additionally, we demand the immediate transfer of JOHL and all its assets from Cayman Island and other jurisdictions to GNPC. 7, we demand immediate disclosure of the Ake plan of development from the Petroleum Commission and the government. To conclude, we firmly believe that a country micromanaged by the IMF cannot be seen to engage in fiscal recklessness that undermines its recovery. Even though Ake has sold their interest in Ghana, they are scheming to stay on the Pecan development through surrogates and Ghanaian collaborators across segments of our society to amass ridiculous benefits from the Pecan field development. Ake Energy purchased an FPSO for $35 million. In their plan of development submitted to the government, Ake's previous owners intended to build Ghana $1.7 billion for the FPSO. We admit that the Energy Ministry has raised a preliminary objection to the cost of the FPSO, but there is no proposal on how much the ministry considers fair value for the FPSO.
These CSOs have asked for my head or for my resignation. It's a pressure. Everybody is calling me here and there. What have you done? Is it true that you have surreptitiously, as the word is, or scandalously decided to take GNPC shares and sell it to a foreign company, depriving this country of? I believe these are all allegations that I find them unfortunate. It's not the case. CG oil industry is very sensitive. And it's not my activity as an individual. It's not my conduct as an individual that will determine what is happening. I am complimented by, indeed, it's a chain of command. The presidency, the Ministry of Finance, our board of directors, there's an executive committee of GNPC, and the CEO is in charge of all these things. Before we take any decision, we go through meetings. Now, I can't on my own go and sell GNPC assets. As I said, it's a bit complicated. Now, I will have left, immediately you write such a thing about it, that people sense, even you in the media, you sense that there's a problem there. Somehow, how can a GNPC chairman go and sell shares of the company to a foreign, deprive this country? Maybe he's doing so that he will be benefit from it. We'll have some, they'll pay him on the side. It's scandalous. Is that not?
Was there any intention to sell?
Please, there's no intention to do so.
You're welcome back. So you have been listening to the CSOs. There were 29 CSOs that came together and to demand that Freddie Blay and the head of the GNPC be stopped from trying to sell Ghana cheap. And then you heard also Freddie Blay himself also responding and saying that this is not like some cigarette that you can sell. But clearly, there is a problem. And the Minister for the Sector's correspondence on the subject shows without a doubt that there is a problem. It is not the CSOs that are raising issues, but the issues began with Matthew Opoku Prempeh, having problems with the GNPC. My guest to deal with this first part of the discussion, John Ampontia Koma, is MP Ejiso and Deputy Minister for Finance. Emmanuel Ama Kofi-Boa is MP Elembele, Deputy Minority Leader and former Energy and Petroleum Minister. Theo Echampong is economist and political risk analyst. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Good morning.
Right. So let me begin with Emmanuel Amanko-Febois, because the NDC has also waded into this debate and appear to agree with the civil society, 29 of them, the issues they raise. So for starters, why should Ghanaians be listening to the CSOs and yourselves instead of Freddie Blay? And we'll share the various positions as have been, canvassed.
Good morning. Good morning, Samson, and good morning to colleagues and your listeners.
Right.
Let me take you back. So Anadaku decides to sell 100% of his shares in the Deepwater Tunnel and the West Cape 3 Points. And then they informed the Ministry of Energy. Ghana initially tries to preempt that transaction. The companies push back because of stability clauses. And they were right in doing so, because remember that at 919, which was passed in 2016, these companies have been in existence. So somehow, through negotiations, the minister carves out 7% in this agreement. And the companies had to do so because they also know that this transaction cannot go through without the consent of Ghana through the Minister of Energy. So the transaction, because they want to conclude it quickly, decide to set aside 7%, and they formed this Jubilee Oil Holding to basically hold that 7%. Initially, it was held by Anadaku, and so the transaction is complete. The government of Ghana, through the Ministry of Finance, pays, as we've been told, 168 million, and the transaction is completed. The minister now writes to GNPC to basically make sure that 7% is transferred to Esploco, the strategic commercial arm of GNPC, which was established to basically push GNPC's agenda. So this is really how it went. And so the transaction is closed. The whole preemption issues and all and what Ghana said has been done. We get our 7%, the transaction is complete. And here comes PetroSA now preempting the 7% that has been received and saying that they want. Now, listen, the joint operating agreement between the parties, even if that applies, requires that they basically do that. If you preempt and it's correct, based on your percentage, let's grant that the joint operating agreement stands. PetroSA has 4% in this agreement, and Jubilee Oil Holding has 7%. So what is the basis for the 50-50 that the chairman has agreed? In his letter, he says that he's agreeable to that 50%. Even if we agree that the joint operating agreements allowed that preemption to take place, the chairman is not able to explain how he arrived at the 50-50%. In any event, we have also not seen a board approval of this decision. Why is it that it is the GNPC board chairman who is writing the letter? Is he the executive chairman? Why is it not the CEO writing the letter? In any event, why is it writing the letter in direct disregard of the directive of the Minister of Energy? But what is really important for me and for us, a lot of us, has to do with GNPC's mandate. GNPC, number one goal is to increase Ghana's stake, make sure our stakes are increased, more oil for Ghana. The reason why GNPC was established, that's the first objective. And one of the reasons why GNPC is being given money every year by Parliament is basically to prepare them to the day where Ghana will be in a position to get our national oil company to basically discover and produce oil independently so that all these foreign companies, Tullow, Cosmos, and others, will not be giving us basically crumbs. That's why we established Exploco as well. So having asked these questions and making the point that we have not been able to understand the legal and commercial basis for the chairman's letter, especially because it contravenes the directive of the minister, but more importantly, even the joint operating agreement does not ask, it doesn't require that PetroSA gets 50%. So where did that 50% go? He is also not the CEO. What did the CEO also know? But more importantly, we are concerned because as we speak, Ghana is stuck with 3 producing oil fields. In fact, Jubilee is now produced over 50%. We stand the danger of basically depleting our reserve without adding anything on. The only opportunity we had, if you recall, had to do with the Ake field. Remember the history of that field. Hess was about to produce it. We were ready. We were going to produce it under the NDC government after we had prepared 3 producing fields. Then all of a sudden, Côte d'Ivoire lays claim to that field. So we go to arbitration. By the time we come back, Hess says he's pulling out. Ake comes in. And then the rest is history. And I won't try to go there because it takes us a whole day. But to say briefly that Ake basically has taken our country on a ride, come back and says that, listen, you need to give me all this sweetness before I'll produce. I'll go fast track. We reduce our stake. In fact, we take 24% of Exploco and give it to Ake. We reduce it by 43% to 18%. We take the power of the Petroleum Commission and give Ake all sorts of sweetness. Well, guess what? Ake doesn't produce that field. We are still stuck and our reserves are depleting. They come back, with GNPC involved, they come back again, and I'm talking about this government. All of a sudden, Ake come and say that I'm selling my stake for 1.65 billion, and they have support of government. They come to Parliament, and this year's those who are being condemned today stood up. Thankfully, a lot of us in Parliament also stood up, and we said the South Deep Water Tunnel, there's no oil there. We can't buy that. Well, it turns out that less than a year and a half or 2 years, Ake is now saying, yes, I agree, there was nothing there. And we now know. But guess who was leading the effort? GNPC. So we as Ghanaians must be concerned that the national oil company that must be responsible for increasing our stake is being led by the board chairman, who is not the executive chairman, who doesn't have the minister's approval, who has been told by the minister that don't sell that 7%, in fact, transfer it to Exploco, who doesn't have a board approval, is basically negotiating to give 50% of a stake that will use the government of Ghana's money to pay for. If GNPC is paying, they're not even finished paying the government of Ghana. So the people of Ghana must be interested in this transaction, especially the questions I've raised.
All right.
And that is why we are worried.
Okay. Please hold on for me. Dr. Theo Champon, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Samson.
Great. I don't know whether you get fatigue over this issue. I remember 2019, I hosted you guys, Imani, Kofi Bento, Kofi Bento, Bright Simmons, yourself, and you had raised the critical issue of the potential of Ghana losing some $30 billion US. And you had said, quote, Aker Energy is walking all over this government at that time. Then in 2021, the issue pops up again about the need for GNPC to, as in government of Ghana, to commit as much as 1.6 billion in this process. And we were told of the promise of raking tax and royalties, approximately 7.51 billion in nominal terms, that there was going to be substantial foreign exchange inflows, estimated around 27 billion in nominal terms, and all sort of sweet things. Then we woke up to news of, ECA not actually being able to live up to the promise. And then now this. And you guys now have come together in a strong 29 civil society organizations. Please explain to the man on the street, what is this that you are fighting for?
Oh, it's very easy. We are fighting for Ghana and Ghana's interests, and that has always been the primary driver in all of this. It's interesting you quote some of the things that's happened in the past, because look, we have analyzed these issues ad nauseum, gone the nitty-gritty, done the due diligence, the back and forth. And back then, we highlighted serious issues about the ACA deal or the transaction, to the point that we even had to amend the country's petroleum laws just to suit or favor this one particular investor, off the back of various promises that were made about this particular investment. Then fast forward, you're right, 2021 thereabout, there's a proposed sale. Again, we do the analysis, and it is the conclusion is very clear that we should not be paying the 1.6 billion for those two assets because they were grossly overvalued. A number of us were hounded and even appeared on the front page of some newspapers, national newspapers, saying that we were quote unquote anti-Ghana.
That's right. I remember that.
Right? Yep. Fast forward, only a year and a half or so down the line, this same asset that was going to be bought for 1 billion of Ghana's own money, and actually we gave it to them. Remember, an honorable Amaboy is very right. We gave it to them for free on a silver platter. This same asset now is being sold to another entity for $1 and some other sort of consideration. So you begin to actually wonder who is actually anti-Ghana in all of this. Is it civil society or the people whom we've actually given our mandate to negotiate for and on behalf of the good people of Ghana? So currently there are two issues on the table. The first issue relates or deals with the Jubilee Oil Holdings, which is a subsidiary of GNPC that bought the 7% combined interest in the 10 and then the Jubilee field. So Anadarko was one of the partners in the deal. Anadarko says that they are leaving Ghana. And then in the back and forth of that process, Ghana says that, okay, don't worry, we're going to buy those shares, right? Or some of those shares, and then transfer it to the National Oil Company or its subsidiary in that process. Now, something happens. When you read the petroleum laws of this country, and here I'll be very specific with you, Act 919, the Petroleum and Exploration Act, Section 18.1, which addresses or deals with issues of preemption. And let me quote for the purposes of educating our listeners. It says that where a contractor enters into an agreement to dispose of all or part of the interest of that contractor directly or indirectly under a petroleum agreement, the corporation, so this is GNPC, shall have a right or a preemption right to acquire that said interest on the same terms as agreed with the potential buyer. It is very clear. It is unambiguous. So I'm a bit at a loss now how suddenly the board chair of GNPC says that PetroSA, which is one of the partners in this deal, now enters into the equation, and there's meant to be a proposed 50% sale of the 7% that has been transferred to Jubilee Offshore Holdings, which was rightly acquired by the state using this preemption rights. And it is very important to state that the preemption rights of the state or Ghana as a whole supersedes any other right of any other party in the petroleum agreement. It is very clear. And we've got precedent to this. You can go back to the when Cosmos Energy also wanted to sell out of its asset back in 2010. There was the whole back and forth around that. And Ghana at that point elected again to execute those preemption rights to say, look, if you want to sell to, it was then ExxonMobil at the time, we even opened a data room for them without all of the due process. But we used that right of the state to stop that deal and to force Cosmos to now stay and become a partner in all of this. So the process is very clear. There is no way that a right and a shares that have been acquired using national money or public resources through a company that has been set up as a subsidiary of the GNPC. And this right belongs to the people or the good people of Ghana. There is no way that a third party who is a commercial party in this transaction, in this case PetroSA, can come in and say, let's take a portion of those rights. If that were the case, then we might as well just have Tallow Oil and all the other partners in the deal also saying that we also have a portion of those rights that should be accruing to us. So I think the board chair is very wrong on this, and we have to be very emphatic about that. And I support the call of civil society in relation to this, because we have studied this this transaction or proposed transaction. We've looked at the past behavior of officials at the National Oil Company and others in relation to how we've been giving away these deals and concessions. And in this particular instance, it is very clear to us that the board chair was wrong. In fact, the minister was right by having written those letters and telling the board chair to stop what he is doing, because it is at variance and contrary to the laws of Ghana, and particularly the Petroleum Agreement and the Petroleum Act, which is where every other thing, derives from. Honorable Freddie Blay makes references to things like the Companies Act and things in terms of supporting the arguments that he was making in the press release that I have seen. But nowhere in that Company Act can that take precedence over the core legislation which governs the sector, which is the Act 919, the Petroleum Act, and specifically sections 18, 1 to 4, which deals or addresses the issues of preemption. So that's the first issue. And then quickly on the second issue, which has to do with the Aker Energy transaction and the purported buying of an FPSO for under the proposed plan of development for $1.7 billion. And again, as civil society, we've done the homework, we've done some analysis, and it is very clear that if we want to go that route, then we're actually better off commissioning a new FPSO to be built. It takes about 2 to 3 years. The plan of development, as has been submitted, and the related matters within that clearly shows that if we elect to buy this old FPSO, so the FPSO is basically a tanker that when they produce the crude, they process it within that with the machines that are in there, and then they store the crude, and the crude is taken to the market. The current proposal is actually to use a very, very old FPSO. In fact, it's over 15 or so years old. There will be some modifications and you name to it. But the price tag of that FPSO, for us, we think it leaves a lot of questions to be. In fact, on the books of Aker Energy, the value that they attached to that FPSO was about $50 million. So how that suddenly metamorphoses and becomes 1.7 billion under the proposed, plan of development, leaves a lot to be desired. We think if you even did some modifications to this old FPSO and things like that. It shouldn't cost more than $500 million to actually do that, and then some additional OPEX. So there are serious issues that we have raised, and many a time when we have raised these issues, we've actually found ourselves being right, and unfortunately, some of the government agencies, who we assume would be acting in the interest of the nation, not, doing.
Let's see what happens this time, because this time it doesn't appear to me that it's actually you, the CSOs, that are raising the issue. Now it's an internal fight that you are giving, as it were, you are elevating for the people to understand. Because all the time you have raised the issues on the occasions that it has come up, you have been said to be wrong. And as we go on, time appears to vindicate you, the CSOs. Now, Mr. Boa, Freddie Blay issued a statement, and he said the allegations surrounding the supposed surreptitious, clandestine, and scandalous sale of so-called GNPC shares are unequivocally false. There is no intention by GNPC or me as its chairman to divest 7% shareholding of Jubilee Holdings Limited, nor has there been any claim by PetroSA to acquire shareholding interest in Jubilee Holdings Limited. Such claims can only stem from an uninformed and malevolent mind. On the back of the correspondence, how do you interpret this reaction?
A letter. Obviously, the board chairman has written a letter, and the letter is very clear. The response from PetroSA basically said they are ecstatic, they are excited about it, that the chairman agrees with them that we giving out 50% of our stake is mutually beneficial to us. And we should be concerned that this is a letter that is not coming from them. It is a letter in response to a letter that the chairman of GNPC has written. But more importantly, this letter was written against the backdrop of a letter that the minister has written earlier, saying that to stop engagement with PetroSA. But let me make some few clarifications. I think when I started, I made it very clear. The 7% that we acquired, yes, remember that we had some issue with ExxonMobil earlier when Cosmos tried to sell the very early years. Because we learned lessons from how unclear the issue of preemption was, where we made it very clear in Act 919. If you look at 19, it was very clear that GNPC could preempt. But as I said, because Cosmos and Adako and Talo were there before Act 919, they basically pushed back on the stability clauses, relying on the old agreements, especially those in their petroleum agreement. And that is why the negotiation had to be done for the 7%. That, there's no doubt. The fact of the matter is that if your mandate is to increase our reserves and make sure we have more oil, and you know that we are stuck with 3 producing fields, the 4th field we have been played with the connivance of this government. With the connivance, and I say that clearly because if you go back to our record, everything that Ake brought, we stood up and spoke out and told the government it is not in the interest of Ghana. The government refused. I mean, how on earth can you tell the regulator of a country that you won't have access to regulate Ake alone in this agreement? Because Ake said they want so. They don't want anybody to come and measure for them. How do you allow a petroleum company to decide the kind of shares they want?
All right.
All of that has happened. So what I'm saying is that the points that Honorable Blay has raised is neither here nor there. I've asked questions. He is not an executive chairman, but he is writing as if he's the CEO of GNPC. He is offering 50%, and he has not shown us the legal and commercial basis for that offer. I have made a point that the joint operating agreement, even if it operates, PetroSA has 4%, Jubilee Oil Holding has 7%, and you have to do pro rata. It doesn't give them 50%, so there's no basis. So if you look at all of the things I've said, the man is on the wrong path, and that is why I have asked for a critical investigation to make sure that we keep that 7% without divesting anything to petrol.
Right, and I need you guys to help us understand this properly. And Dr. Theo Champon referred to the particular provision and read it. Is it that this preemption right, it is only Ghana that is clothed with the power to trigger it, and not any other party in the arrangement? Now, a preemption right simply explaining to say that we are in some contract together, but once there's a new sort of property or something that comes into it, I should be giving the right first. I should be offered the right first to decide whether I want to take it or I don't want, before you consider giving it to other people. Are you saying it is by the law, it is only Ghana or GNPC that can trigger that, and the other parties cannot?
It says, and the law is section 19. It says that where a contractor enters into an agreement to dispose of an interest of that contract, that contractor, directly or indirectly, the corporation, which is GNPC, have a preemptive right, interest on the same terms as agreed to preempt it. So basically, in this law of Ghana, we are saying that anybody who decides to sell his shares, our national oil company will have the first right to basically preempt it. We've made it very clear. It wasn't very clear in PND's law, but it's very clear in this law.
Yeah, just a second. And Dr. Theo Champon, what do you say is the purpose of this particular provision?
Yeah,
and
so I think
and is it being defeated in the current arrangement?
So Honorable tried to explain that, and very right. So we have to trace the genesis, go back to PNDC law 83, and even the law that sets up GNPC law 84. Right. Normally, when a company comes in and wants to explore your petroleum resources, they will enter into an agreement with the host nation, which owns the resources under the sea. And in Ghana, in our constitution, I think 2368 or something like that, it says that all natural resources are vested, right, for the president to be used on behalf of the people. I'm just paraphrasing.
You're right.
And then it then says that the president then has offloaded part of this state interest. So this interest, or what GNPC does, belongs to the people of Ghana. They are only operating or holding it in trust for us. So if a company comes in and says that I want to explore your petroleum resources, they will enter into an agreement with the nation state, but with GNPC acting on behalf of the nation of Ghana. Or if there is a national oil company in another country, then it will be their national oil company. And then it says that if you now decide at some point that I want to transfer my equity or shares in that arrangement to another company, and in this case, whether you want to do a direct share transfer or indirect share transfer, because it is governed by a petroleum agreement, that deal that or paperwork that determines the contractual obligations between the nation state and all of the partners or the contractors on the project. So if you want to do that, then the nation state, in this case Ghana, being represented by GNPC, the national oil company, has a first right of refusal to say that, well, I know you want to sell it to somebody else, but let me make you an offer first, and let us negotiate on that. If I decide that I don't want it as a nation state, then I will give you my blessing to go and sell it to any other party for whatsoever.
Right.
The reason and the logic behind that, Samson, is that we want the nation state to get as much of the proceeds or the shares arising
My
out of
question
that.
is, and we'll talk to Freddie Blaze shortly. My question is, has this been breached?
So there are two things here. If you read the letter and the spirit of Act 919, it is very clear that GNPC has the preemption right, and we cannot, as a people, offload those shares to PetroSA or any other company for that matter. We've paid for it. It should be a settled matter. Then, if you go back or trace back under the stabilization provisions to the contract or the petroleum agreement that governs this, and the parties then will start and say, oh, we've got a stabilization clause, you cannot change the terms, etc. Even under the old law, if you read it very carefully, because we have paid for this and it is a settled deal, again, even under the old law, we cannot offload a portion or part of this to another entity in the way and manner that is currently being proposed. So on the basis of the old law, on the basis of the new law, both of them, it is very clear.
Okay.
We cannot offload or sell.
Thank you. And earlier, Theo Champon was referring to Article 257, Clause 6. It says that every mineral in its natural state in, under, or upon any land in Ghana, river, stream, water courses throughout Ghana, the exclusive economic zone, and any area covered by the territorial sea or continental shelf is the property of the Republic of Ghana and shall be vested in the President on behalf of and in trust for the people of Ghana. Many times the public servants appear not to appreciate the on behalf of and in trust for the people. Freddie Blaze is the chairman of the GNPC's board. He joins us. Thank you very much for making time to join us, sir.
Thank you very much, Larry. I am where I have a lot of noise at a funeral a little far away, and I can barely hear what the discussion is going on. But it's very important. Just as I tried to get in touch with you last night, so that if I couldn't even join, someone else could also speak on some of the issues that a number of speakers have already made their contribution on. Now, I wanted you to ask me any question. I think I've heard them. A lot of people have even referred to some laws. Of course, not all the laws are relevant. But what are the issues? Am I supposed to talk about ACE issue, or I'm talking about there's a 7% transfer that people are talking about without maybe reference to the details of it? If you want to ask me questions, I will brief you where I'm coming from. Then I will leave you and your participants.
All right. Okay. So in your letter, as in your press release, you speak about under the heading.
My letter or
your press release.
Very good.
You speak about sale and divestment of 7% shares acquired from Jubilee Oil Holdings Limited.
JOHL, yes.
Right. And here you say that absolutely nothing wrong has been done. In fact, you say that the allegation of sale of the so-called GNPC shares are unequivocally false, and that there is no intention by GNPC or yourself to divest 7% shareholding in the Jubilee Holdings.
Jubilee and Temple. Listen, what I've said is that it's not an issue of GNPC holding shares and then officers, particularly Freddie Blaze as chairman, decide who deals mainly with shareholding of the corporations and so forth, deciding that I'm disposing of the shares to some other company. I think that it's been lost on those who are making contributions that it's a question of preemption. And Adako deciding to offload its participating interest with regards to certain shares. It's not only 7%, it's about 24%, but some of them have taken, I don't need to go into it, it's a bit detailed. But if they decided, and 7% in this respect was capped for JOHN, which was put together by Anadako. It's a company that was registered in the Cayman Islands. It's an offshore company. Now, it was that 7% participating interest that at the moment is being handed over to GNPC. GNPC have bought for 168, as one of the participants had already told you. Now, what is the issue? The issue is, after this 7% by Anadako being put for sale or having been conveyed to Ghana, in 2021, South African company, that is, who is a participant, is a member of JO, that the Joint Operating Agreement, had already also given notice of its preemption right under the JOA, that they are also interested in purchasing it, because among the participants, what is it? Among the contracting parties, they've agreed to the idea that any of them wants to dispose of any interest that is owed. The other members should have first preemption right. Then, based on that, it's pro rata. That's the arrangement. As to whether they are right or wrong, I think it's for lawyers to decide. I can't tell you much about it. We've had advice from our own lawyers in and outside, and we are realizing that maybe we are wrong or maybe we are right. But even then, what I'm saying is that it doesn't preempt any discussion about it, because as far back as 2021, we've been discussing among them. They have said that they want to insist on the preemption, and we have said no. Then it is some kind of correspondence that's going on between me and my supervising minister, which I'm not ready to go into at the moment, over it as to what to do and how to go and proceed. But we've not yet concluded that. However, the talking between us, that is the chairman of the South African Corporation, my counterpart in South Africa, and myself, and we've met not just one-on-one, but group to group since 2021, discussing about this year, their intention to preempt and our intention to keep what Anadako has given us through JOHL at the moment being held by JH. We've been talking about it, and I wrote a letter proposing that can be, instead of you taking the 7% or we taking all the 7%, can we discuss, because they wanted giving 75% of them, and I said no, let them take 50%. But I added something. I added that even this that we are talking about, the keenness, it's subject to the approval or otherwise of my minister. This is in the letter written, and they have the copy to everybody that is involved. So we are discussing it. It doesn't mean that we dispose of it. I understand when people have come, as CSOs have come to say that they have been talking about AKE in the past. They've been talking about ENI in the past. They've been talking, I agree. But we are still discussing this matter. And proposals in and out are being given. They themselves counter proposal are also making. Now, in the course of this, and then letter comes out to the public, then they are saying that Freddie Blaine, as an individual, has disposed of the interest of Ghana, and sold out the interest of Ghana. I think it's not fair.
Yeah, the contention is that GNPC has engaged PetroSA, and you have proposed an equal share. you don't have the locus to do that. You disagree?
Something, so wait, don't talk about locals in this one. Something, what I'm saying is this. Why should I even make that proposal? If the threat that they say that they have a right to it, and if we don't say they have a right, the question is, it goes to arbitration. I'm saying let's prevent arbitration, because I have my advice, you have your advice. But I don't want to tell you what advice I have had from our own professionals, not individuals talking on
that's fine. But
wait, let me finish. So it is a question of trying to prevent going to an arbitration. As we have a duty, fiduciary duty to our corporation, to protect the shares of the corporation, to protect Ghana's interests. And in good conscience, if you say that, please, let's talk about this one. And I add also that, subject to the approval of my supervising minister, what wrong have I done?
Yes,
not making it look like as if.
Yes, as you have eloquently said, you are under the minister, and the minister issues directives. You must comply by those directives. As we understand, you sought the Attorney General's advice, and the Attorney General confirmed the minister's position. So why were you still going ahead in the manner you did?
Ladies, something like this. I don't want to discuss what has gone on between me and my minister over here, because, of course, there is like you mentioned, as is been amply explained and re-echoed on your platform, that all minerals and resources that comes from the bowels of the earth, the bowels of our country, are vested in the president, and therefore we all must listen to what the presidency will say about it. So we are discussing. I don't want to now to discuss as to what our business was wrongly or rightly as well. We are discussing. So I wish I would not discuss it.
Okay, but the CSOs, like any other Ghanaian, have a right to be concerned, because, as you said, the president is holding this in trust for the people of Ghana. So, as a fiduciary,
I understand if they should be concerned. I don't find anything wrong with their being concerned. I don't find anything wrong with their being, but they must also have the facts. They must also a lot of them have quoted extensively laws related to the petroleum agreement.
That's right.
And they've talked about it. They've not mentioned, I haven't heard anybody say that among the contractor parties, they also have joint operating agreements. Nobody has talked about it. Maybe they have not read it, or they don't know about it. But I wouldn't say I know the law, all the law, with regards to what we are doing.
Okay.
We therefore depend on advice from lawyers and from professionals that we've hired and paid for that advice. Yeah. So I understand if they are making contributions, but they must also take time to sometimes listen or even contact and have the side of the other side, of the other people that they are accusing. That's all I'm saying.
Right, but is it not problematic when your release says the so-called sale of the shares are unequivocally false, and that there is no intention to do so or to divest 7% shareholding of the Jubilee holding, when in the letter it is rather very categorical that the proposal is for unequal sharing?
Danson, we are going forth and back. I have said that I haven't denied that I wrote the release. I'm saying the issue is preemption. The issue is not the sale of Ghana's assets. Preemption of assets that Anadako is giving out. We say we have a right of preemption. We have the first right. And indeed, we've even gone ahead to acquire that one.
Okay.
South Africa says that they have right of preemption. Maybe I had, of course, maybe Ghana GNPC is not party to the joint operating agreement. Therefore, may not have the right. These are interpretation of what it is here and there. And this is what we are discussing. Those who are not privy to it, they don't know it, will go ahead and refer to part of the law and make it look like it's the whole of the law. Please,
okay.
That's what I'm saying. I have not discussion with my counterpart in South Africa about what can we do, because you say you have a preemption. We think we don't have it, and therefore let's discuss it. But we don't need to go to court, we don't need to go to arbitration on that. So please, if we can come to an agreement, and beg me, it's not just out of my head that I'm just saying, please, let's decide to share what we are quarreling about.
Okay. We understand your present circumstance. We understand your present circumstance and where you are. My final question to you will be, what will you do on the back of the minister's clear objection to the approach you have taken? You say in your release that as a compromise solution, we have proposed the option of a 50-50 split of the 7% shares GNPC was holding. It is important to note that we have yet to outline specifics for the finality on the matter, and this compromise is subject to confirmation and subsequent advice of the minister. We are still in the stage of ongoing discussions. The minister appreciates what you have communicated in your letters, and yet writes in the strong language that he does. He says, cease and desist. What are you going to do?
Something. As I talk to you now, I have ceased and I'm desisting. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Okay. So let me get your quick reaction so that we wrap up on this. I don't know if you want to say anything about it, but let's get. Let me start with Mr. Emmanuel Ama Kofi-Boa.
Senior colleague from Elembele was saying that his whole basis for what he did was relying on the joint operating agreement. There was one fundamental point I made. Even if we rely on the joint operating agreement, that joint operating agreement has a clear formula for sharing, and it's pro rata. And I've said PetroSA has 4%, Jubilee Oil Holding has 7%. How did he arrive at 50-50%? I mean, how did he arrive at 50-50 when he doesn't have a board approval? Is he able to tell us the legal and commercial basis on how he arrived at 50-50? Obviously not. But as I said, my real concern has to be the point that has been made earlier. The National Oil Company, led by its board chairman, who is supposed to drive us to increase our reserve, is the one leading the efforts to reduce our reserve. And we as Ghanaians must be concerned. Among a lot of the things that has happened with connivance of this government, that we in the NDC opposition have been very disappointed about.
When you talk about without board approval and so on, as we know, the Jubilee Oil Holdings Limited, which is registered as a company in the Cayman Islands, the directors are Freddie Blay and the Opoku Ashene Dankwa, the GNPC boss. Is that not so?
Okay. That Jubilee Oil Holding must have somebody who is leading it. It is definitely not Freddie Blay. In any event, it is the CEO of GNPC. If somebody has to write, should be the one writing the letter. Because we all know that the board chairman is not an executive chairman. So those are questions that are legitimate there. In any event, the chairman says he was writing a letter, hopefully to negotiate, to make sure that PetroSA doesn't go on that part of arbitration. But that letter was not an invitation to negotiate. was a letter proposing a 50%, a 50-50 share. And that is the point that has to be made. But the fact of the matter is that this must be stopped. I think going forward, GNPC must be focusing its efforts in building its capacity to get to the point, that's all we've said, to get to the point where we have the technical capacity to increase our reserve and not the opposite.
Okay, thank you very much. So now he says that at this moment he has ceased and he has desisted in accordance with the directives of the minister, now, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh. So are you okay now? All right, Dr. Theo Champo.
Okay, yes. Thank you very much. I mean, I listened to Honorable Lee very carefully. And again, there are a lot of inconsistencies, even in the questions that you asked him, right? He makes reference to the GOA, and then he also makes reference to the petroleum agreement. But there's one fundamental point that we have to make here, that the rights that accrue under a GOA, a joint operating agreement, cannot in any way supersede the rights that accrue to a nation state, which it has under the preemption governing the petroleum agreement. It is very clear, and there's a lot of precedent to this, lot of cases that you can cite to back that up. So I'm just a bit surprised that suddenly we're trying to hide under this cloak of a joint operating agreement to say, oh, let's sit down and negotiate something. I think if PetroSA pushed, let's go for arbitration. And Ghana has a very strong case, both on the basis of law and basis of precedent and practice.
The board chairman appears to say that is what he's been trying to prevent.
But in this case, it's a non-starter, because if you look at all of the case law, the precedent and everything in here, there is no way that a party within that joint operating agreement, in this case PetroSA, can activate certain rights in which there are other bigger rights to it. The right of the state, in this case, the preemption right of the state. And as Honorable Boa was even telling you here, even if we agree that the GO rights, right, even hold, and you did a pro rating and all of that, there is no way you can get to 50-50%. It doesn't even arise in the first instance. So for the chair to even have proposed that and then be writing letters back and forth, I think it was a non-starter. And I support the call of civil society for the chair to resign or for him to be fired. It's very clear.
He says he has ceased and he has desisted. Is that not enough?
It is not enough. It is not enough. We've seen these things far too often where, look, certain interests tend to be driving the affairs rather than the broader interest of things. And on this particular issue here, if I were him, if I were the board chairman, I would resign on this, because...
Well, he's been clear. He says he would rather be sacked.
The state would be mortgaged and such things. If a PetroSA wants, let's push it, let's go to arbitration. And Ghana has a very, very strong case to actually fight for that 7%. We shouldn't even be entertaining that thought at all.
He says he would rather be sacked.
Well, I mean, the appointing authority can fire him. That's up to them. But on the basis of what is very clear precedent, his law, things backing it, it just beggars belief that we would even be discussing this.
But why is the focus on the board chair and not equally the Mr. Opoku Anhwene Dankwa, the boss of the GNPC? Because as you guys have pointed out, the board chair is signing letters when he's supposed to be doing all of these things. So why is it not an equal targeting?
Most of us on the CSO angle, we already said that the CEO must also resign or be fired by the appointing authority, because this is like, you're looking at this, working at a problem staring right at you, and you're literally walking with your head inside to give something away to a party that, on the other hand, rather we should be fighting and safeguarding the interests of the state. We've been talking for the last 6 years, not a single drop of additional barrel of oil has been, added, despite all of the big talk and all the back and forth. And part of it has to do with some of these very bad and incoherent decisions that our policymakers, and in this instance, GNPC is making.
By the estimation of these 29 CSOs, of course, there's one CSO, Send Ghana, which says that it actually did not, as it were, sign onto the statement and dissociate itself from it. Now, by your estimation, what is the monetary loss to Ghana if this were carried through?
I haven't worked out the numbers, but according to the PIAC report, last year, Jubilee Offshore Holdings and our lifting entitlements was just to the tune of about $290 million or so. I can double check the numbers just to be sure. But if on that basis, you're going to be potentially giving away half of that, that's what, almost about $45 million. That can build a lot of CHIPS compound, schools, hospitals, and even roads.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Theo Champong. And Dr. Theo Champong will stay with us as we look at what is going to come under review in the light of the IMF package. I realize that Mr. Aman Kofi-Boa was still on the line. You can speak to us in a minute. What is it that you want to say more?
Let me thank your audience, but obviously the chairman's responses were not very satisfactory, as has been stated. But you see, we cannot look at the chairman and this recent act to PetroSA as an isolated case. We must look at it in the context of the things that has happened in the upstream petroleum sector since this government came to power. And all you can describe is that when it comes to the petroleum sector, this government has basically kowtowed to big corporate entities and has basically not representing the interests of the people of Ghana. In every decision they've made, and I cite how we lost 350 million in oil in place in one day when we gave 24% of a local asset to Ake. And this pattern and this attempt at giving this 50% is as part of it. The reason why every serious upstream investor has left Ghana, the reason why the upstream sector has come to a stop still, the reason why we are stuck with 3 producing fields and is depleting and we don't see a way clear with even the next production is because this government has been a monumental failure when it comes to the petroleum sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I'm on Talo's page, and it says that, just reading some previous stuff, it says, as per the Deep Water Tunnel Joint Operating Agreement, that's the JOA, Talo has preemption rights in respect of the 11.05% participating interest within the offshore DWT block acquired by Cosmos Energy as a result of its acquisition of an Adako WCTP company announced on 13th October 2021. Talo has exercised its right of preemption over this participating interest in DWT, and assuming all JV partners also fully exercise their preemption rights, this would increase Talo's share in the block by 7.7% to a total of 54.8%. This would in turn increase Talo's equity interest in the Jubilee and 10 fields to 38.9% and 54.8% respectively. And I'm just on their page reading this publication of 11th of November 2021, where Talo Oil PLC announced that it has exercised its right of preemption related to the sale of Occidental Petroleum's interest in the Jubilee and 10 field in Ghana to Cosmos Energy. Thank you. Make of it what you may. Yes, John.
Yes, I have been following the discussion. I just want to also make a comment to disprove what Honorable Ama Kofi-Buah just stated before he left, that there's a monumental failure on the part of government. He has been a minister in the sector before. Ghana didn't have 7% in any of the interests of the big players in the sector. How will he describe that? Today we are talking about government policy that has created a certain interest for Ghana that is under discussion. So he should not be talking about failure. If there's any monumental failure, it was him when he was in charge. I mean, clearly, what has become an issue today is a matter of different policy direction by the same government. He's even talking as if it is not the minister who has made this issue public. It is the minister himself. And then, of course, his position has been supported by the CSOs. So we must not create...
I don't think the minister made it public.
Well,
I think it's the CSOs that made it public.
Yes,
that's what we know for now.
But pushing the position of the minister.
That's right.
So we must not make it look like government is not even aware about what is happening. It is government, I mean, in terms of different positions, led one by the board and the CEO, and another by the minister, which has become controversial. So I don't want Honorable Kofi-Buah to take the position that he has taken. If there's any monumental failure in that sector, it is rather the NDC government. I just want to put finality on this matter by agreeing with what Chairman just stated before he left. He said, I have seized, I have desisted. So what is there to talk about again? He himself acknowledged that, even in his press release, whatever he was doing was subject to the confirmation and advice of the minister. So he knew the limitations of his own authority. He couldn't have done...
But he was being prompted, and it appeared that he was ignoring.
Yes, but he says that he himself acknowledged in his latest publication that whatever he was doing was subject to what the minister's confirmation would be. And the minister was clear. Cease and desist. And today, unfortunately, we didn't have that in his publication, but he has announced it to you that he has ceased, he has desisted. And fortunately, this matter has become public. It's also before His Excellency the President. I totally believe that the right decisions will come. His Excellency will give the right instructions, and all these matters will be laid to good rest.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. John Amponchi-Akuma. We will take a break here and return to look at the package of flagship programs that the government intends to review, the word that it loved so much some time ago. We'll be right back.